That was the national anthem of Nigeria, Africa's most populous country with 160 million people and the world's eighth largest oil producer. Nigeria got her independence from the British colony in 1960. In 1966, its elected civilian regime was toppled in a coup d'etat that ushered military rule into Nigeria's public affairs.
The federal military government in Nigeria has taken over the administration of the country. Functions of the federal military government will be exercised by the Supreme Military Council, and details of which will be announced later.
Since 1966, Nigeria has been dominated by military rulers until 1999. In 1999, a new democratic era was ushered into Nigeria when General Abdulsalami Abubakar conducted the third election and handed over power to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, the winner of that election.
Next, the working document for the sustenance of the nation's democracy, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, signed into law recently, will now be handed over by the outgoing head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR, to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, General Olusegun Obasanjo, GCFR.
However, there is a huge gap between the promise of Nigeria's rather well-designed federal constitution and the practice of Nigeria's federal democracy from 1960 till date. This has led to human flight, commonly referred to as brain drain, and had also left a vacuum in the educational sector, thereby slowing down youth developmental process. What went wrong?
Dr. Nelson Mandela used to say, he says the easiest way to keep a nation in poverty, or the people of a nation in poverty, is to deprive them of good education. Obviously, the style of administration that was handed over to the post-colonial leaders, by the colonial administrators, is actually responsible for what we'll see today in post-colonial Nigeria. After several years of entering the political system in Nigeria, we didn't have a higher institution. So it was reluctantly, 1934, that the British colonial administrators decided to establish the Yaba College of Technology. And even at that, they controlled, they determined the curriculum of study, the teachers they would employ, the recruitment of staff, and the training of the teachers who would actually impart knowledge.
As delegates of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, chosen by our people in order to demand for a more democratic constitution, to modify 4 laws affecting our lands, minerals and chiefs, and to request the British government to grant us more political responsibility to enable us to take an active part in the management of our affairs within the framework of the British Empire.
Taking the second point, we'll look at colonial legacy in the aspect of corruption and illicit activities in Nigeria. Now, obviously, apart from the economic and natural resources that the colonial masters carted away with from Nigeria, they also drained the manpower resources. These same legacies have been handed over to the post-colonial administrators, and even right now, not just to the administrators, virtually all Nigerians at almost every cadre, have taken on this idea of corruption and exploitation of every situation they can find themselves in. And that's why you see, of course, political corruption in the country, at the helm of affairs.
Funds that would have been used to improve the infrastructures in Nigeria are being diverted to other areas for personal use, personal wealth. However, Constitution has its own role to play in terms of that corruption. Now, there is something in Nigeria that needs to be given proper attention, and that's the rule of law. The rule of law has it calls for special attention, because in Nigeria we know that there are a lot of individuals who can bypass the law and nothing happens, whereas a common man still in Nigeria, because maybe he's not wealthy, because of maybe he's not protected by maybe whatever powers that because he doesn't have any other maybe authority given to him, might commit the same crime, and he goes to jail for more than 40 years, or as the case may be.
The Constitution gives them rights to misbehave, to do things to their favor. Because the Constitution is not properly maintained the right way it ought to. They believe whatever they do, they can always amend it because they create the Constitution. If you can give an example, if I, being caught stealing, I should pay for it dearly. But you must start with somebody.
Our ambition to be millionaires is running the country down. We all want to be millionaires and to live in the
military system, the military government coming in to break the system as a way of emergency, whichever way, has affected the country. Not just only the educational system, but however, we can just focus on the education. I remember in 1993, the government, then the military government didn't pay attention to the lecturers. Lecturers requested for high pay. When you compare the pay given to lecturers in Nigeria to the developed world, you notice that theirs was absolutely very small. It was so difficult for them to even take care of themselves. That was one of the factors that led to strike action. Today, in Nigerian education, we're actually studying the history of events, that is history of activities, both in the outside world. But however, when you come to the developed world, because of the use of the internet, they are not looking at the history. They look at the history anyway, because the history has a role to play. But again, they are also looking at what is going on in the system, how can this be resolved? But in Nigeria, our focus is based on what happened in 1925, what happened in 1952, what happened in 1983. Nobody is looking at what can we do in 2050. Nobody is thinking, oh, this is what is going on now. This is the physical challenges. These are the challenges going around the world concerning education, concerning development. Nobody is looking at it because we don't even have the internet to go to get those information. No access to information about in Nigeria. There's power problem. The environment is absolutely not conducive. Government would have used all this money they use, the channel in kola nut, serving tea, serving all these things to improving the research environment, funding researches in Nigeria. I am told now that, in fact, I'm aware that in America they have improved from 3G to 4G in terms of the internet. But Nigeria, we are still struggling to balance on the 3. Whereas most countries have gone far. Who is going to bring about this? Is it the market woman in the market? No. It's those students, the youngsters along the street who would have been in the classroom studying that will be able to improve Nigeria technicalities and other factors.
The idea of regionalism and ethnicity and religious conflicts. Now, the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorates by Lord Lugard in 1914 could be described as the beginning of ethnic and regional consciousness in Nigeria. Afterwards, most of the institutions that were established, the distribution of resources were now regionalized, and you can see that shortly after independence we had the Biafran War, and that was an ethnic conflict. Also, you can see that we've had several of these. We've had coups. We had a lot of ethnic and regional conflicts, that ensued in the polity down the line, and even recently, even with the Boko Haram, the Christians and the Muslims, and all of that. So, with all these socio-political and economic upheavals in the country, you see that a lot of people are dissatisfied with staying in the country where you have insecurity, you don't have, there's violence everywhere, so nobody wants to stay in a place that is, devoid, of peace. You want to stay in a peaceful environment, and that's why you see a lot of people trying to see if they can, find a place where they can enjoy peace and prosperity outside the shores of Nigeria.
The easiest way to stem Nigeria's brain drain is to make those still living in that country as comfortable as possible. Let people know that the government cares. In the absence of these, it would be foolhardy to expect a reverse in the brain drain.